Welcome to Capitalize Your Finances, the podcast that's your ultimate guide to mastering personal finances and unlocking the secrets of entrepreneurship. Each week, we dive into the world of personal finance and business development and have fascinating conversations with industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories to help you get ahead in life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking to scale your business or someone just starting out on your financial path, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable insights.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Poniotu, certified financial planning professional, the Cap and Capitalize. In today's episode, we are going to go over something mission critical for your finances, what to do when you have no money. But before we get into that, your free tip of the day. When it comes to investing, narrowing your focus will be the ultimate key to long-term success. Once you figure out your lane, lock in on it and dig a mile deep. So the reason why this is so important is in the world of finance, people are misguided in how to invest to achieve a maximum return on investment. Because a lot of people, what they do is they say, hey, you need to diversify. I'm not against diversification, but name me a billionaire that got to where they are by just spreading their money all over the place. I mean, think about it. If you have 1,000 investments and they're equally weighted and one goes up 100 times, you're not really going to feel it. Now, if you got 10 investments and one of them goes up 100 times, oh boy, you are going to feel it in a great way. Now, a lot of people will say to counteract that, but Chris, if you have 10 investments and let's say 3 of them go to 0, even though you've got that 100 timer, well, what happens then? Guess what? That 100 timer has gone up so much, I mean, literally 100 times, it cancels out the other 9 investments that you have. In the world of investing, you only have to be right a couple times. So stick to what you know. Once you understand it, commit to the fullest, and your net worth will thank you in the long run. Now, that was an elongated free tip. I guess this whole episode is free, but as far as the free episode on what to do when you have no money. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks in the second part of the episode, but before we go to the commercial break, I want to talk about a couple different types of people out there that have no money. Because I think it's good to understand where you're coming from a psychological point of view, and then we can back into, okay, how do we get out of this? So there's a number of reasons why people end up in the position of having no money. And I'm definitely not judging. No one's judging here. And I want to list the few most common that not only I see in my practice, but I think we all just read about from day to day. So for those of you that are younger, it's pretty cut and dry. When you haven't been working hardly at all, it's pretty hard to make money legally. Now, if you're not making any money or you're going to college or trade school or your master's or your doctorate or becoming an attorney, et cetera, the same thing applies. You know, you're digging yourself further into debt and you're not growing your net worth for now, okay? Unless you choose an absolute crap major and then you're going to be in debt forever. But that's like beside the point, okay? Generally speaking, when you're younger, you're not going to have that much money because you haven't been doing it for that long. And by it, I mean like alive on earth, okay? Now, for those of you that have been working 5 years or more, in many cases, you aren't necessarily moving the needle forward, but just a reminder to many of you that are in this camp, because I don't want you to get bogged down by negativity, you're not going backwards either. You know, I was actually talking to one of my buddies about this a couple days ago, where he was telling me that, man, you know, I'm putting money into my 401k and, you know, anything above and beyond the match, like my wife and I are just hammering out our student loans, but like, I don't see my net worth growing. That's actually not true because you've got your assets, which in this case for my buddy, it's his savings, checking, 401k, and it's growing, but it's not supercharging its growth. Okay. And for those of you that aren't, if you're only listening, right, I'm showing the asset gauge. It's not moving substantially. And then you've got liabilities, which is what you owe down below. And he doesn't necessarily see that or think about it in this way, but assets minus liability is your net worth. So even though his assets maybe aren't growing as fast, he and his wife are hammering down these debts. And so his net worth actually is growing, but you don't see it, okay? And the reason why I want to bring this up is even though I know it's happening for you, you also don't feel it as well. But again, this isn't bad. That's like none of these are bad, okay? Now, for those of you that are more experienced in the working world, and let's say, you've made this a career and you've been going for, 10, 15 years, more often than not, there's a couple reasons why you won't have the money as follows, okay? But this is by no means a limiting list. So the most common one I see is people are trying to keep up with the Joneses. And, when you're keeping up with the Joneses, that's a tough life. Because I hate to tell you, there will always be someone worth more than you. Always. And you know what's crazy about that? Because people go, well, what about Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk? It's funny. They actually trade back and forth a lot. And then there's going to be someone, who's the owner of Louis Vuitton? Not that it really matters, but he was the highest net worth for a while and so on and so forth. So, there's always going to be someone better off than you. Or let me rephrase that. There's always going to be someone seemingly better off than you. And I say seemingly because, like with what I do, just as a little side note, I know where the bodies are buried. I mean, when people come in and go, oh, like I just bought this new car, I just bought this new house, or whatever the case is, I'm going, okay, let's see the numbers. And generally speaking, just because they, quote unquote, have it, that doesn't mean they own the asset, okay? So you want to keep up with everyone else and spend unnecessarily, and in many cases, people are overspending. The second most common I see for people that are working or have been working for an extended period of time and they just seemingly don't have any money to their name is, and this one's the unfortunate one. You have unforeseen circumstances come up where, an emergency has to be paid for and you simply were not able to pay it. So you have to take a step backwards. Now, we're going to talk about that after the commercial break on how to combat that. But, just a little teaser, that's kind of why we hone in on how valuable an emergency fund is. Because let's face it, if you don't have it and that emergency happens, you are screwed. And then maybe you have to take out a personal loan or, God forbid, credit card debt with 27% interest rates. And then you're clawing out of that for years. And then the third one that I see is you get laid off from work and you can't find another job. And, I'll tell you, as we're recording this in the summer of 2024, it's a tough economy. It is a tough economy right now. My wife and I, a while back, we got home from a trip in Leavenworth that we like to go to regularly. And I remember we called the front desk of the place we were staying. And it was just taking forever to get a response. Like it just kept ringing and ringing and ringing. It's a pretty nice place. And so we were kind of going, okay, what's going on here? And then when we finally connected with someone, it was actually the manager. And I don't know what it was, like if you were asking for towels or food or whatever the case is. And it was food. Because the manager says, now you're going to have to come down and get the food. Like we're not doing room service. So I go, okay, that's fine. And I'm just kind of curious, like, is that a new thing? Is that just a policy? And he goes, honestly, we just can't find anyone. I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, I mean, we're trying our best. It's just like no one wants to come and work because maybe, and it's a loser takes all type of mentality, right? Because the manager's offering these type of payments because that's the most that they can afford. But then you've got a lot of these people that are trying to work that are asking for the moon, but the employer can't afford it. A lot of these employees are asking for a higher lifestyle, going back to the point one of you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. So it's this really nasty recipe for eventual disaster. Now, this isn't like a quick little tangent. That's not saying that, there's going to be some downturn anytime soon. I have no idea when the next downturn is going to be. And if I did, I'd probably be a lot more wealthy than I actually am. Okay. But the point is it's just tough out there. So I get that. And if you can't find a job, you can't find a job. And then the last one, this one's pretty obvious. You're just simply not on top of your finances. And that's probably why you're listening to this episode, whether you're, just wanting to become more educated, and enlightened in finance, or in many cases, people come and listen to our show because they're desperate and they want to get out. They want to get out of whatever it is, the rat race, the debt. They want to get out of the living paycheck to paycheck in a bad way. And so the good news is you came to the right place. Okay. So, just because you fall into one of or a few of these categories I laid out, that does not mean that, you're doing bad or you're a bad person. All right, let's just get that out of the way, okay? It just means that you need guidance. And in the second part of this episode, we're actually going to line up very black and white what you're going to need to do. So with that, we are going to take a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, I'm going to lay out for you the most important to-dos so that you can go from having no money to not only feeling comfortable. So stick around. We'll be back shortly.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayiotou, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Now that we're back from the break, it is time to get into the most important steps that you will need to take from having no money to having money, and in some cases, a lot of money. So the first one I want to go over, and there's 4. Understand where your money is going every month. So we've talked about this a lot, but it is worth repeating. There are 2 types of expenses that you need to know about. There are fixed expenses and variable expenses. Fixed expenses, very black and white. You cannot get around them, and you need them. You need to pay rent. You need to pay your taxes, okay? You need to pay for water. You need to pay for food. Yes, there could be a range of a grocery bill, but you still need to eat unless you're one of these, modern gurus that's fasting for 3 months, okay? And the variable expenses are just that. They're very flexible. They're fluid. Let's say your entertainment bill, your Netflix, your Amazon purchases, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Probably made a couple people jump at that one. And so what you need to do to capitalize on this is you need to go back 3 months and you need to print out bank statements and your credit card statements. And you need to look at everything that you are spending. Now, if you are obviously making more money than you're spending, that's really good, okay? And we've talked about that in the past. And we're going to keep talking about it on what you need to do with that money above and beyond, what is left over. But even with that fact, it is totally worth doing this process because when you go through that, you're going to quickly figure out there are a number of things that you're spending money on, probably in the variable expenses, where you could probably cut it out. How many of you have, and I'm just going to throw Netflix out there, the Netflix subscription and you're not watching anymore, or an Apple subscription, I am subscribed to Pandora, and I haven't had that app for 5 years on my phone, but I'm still paying for it. Like just little things like that. It's going to get you that much farther ahead. Okay, that's great. Now, if you are spending more than you are making, this one tip is a godsend for you because you'll either get to paycheck, which is by no means bad because that means you're no longer going backwards, or you may go from negative, right, profit per month to now you're actually making money. And that's where it gets really, really exciting. So you got to understand where your money is going every month. That is step number one. Number two, know the power of debt, both for good and bad. This one really grinds my gears, but that's why I took the deep breath because I'm going to try to keep it PG because I know we have kiddos that are listening into this, but I can't make any promises. So with debt, you've got people on both sides of the aisle. And I've spoken about this a ton, okay? And it does get me a little irked, but for you listening, it'll probably be entertaining to see my blood pressure spike. So on one end of the spectrum, you've got the Dave Ramseys of the world who says all debt is bad. You shouldn't take out debt for anything. You should, if you're going to save up for anything, you should just stick cash in an envelope because apparently you're 7 years old and that's how you need to live your life. That's a really stupid way of thinking about it. And then on the flip side, you've got the Robert Kiyosaki's of the world where debt is really, really good and you need to take a ton of debt out because if you take that money and then you reinvest it, you're going to make money on the spread. So if you took out a 10% interest rate loan, but you earn 25% on your money, you just earned 15%. That also is really stupid because you're going to get yourself financially killed. Now, there's glimmers of truth on either side, and that's why I am here to tell you what you actually need to know on the debt side of things. So I don't really care about the balance of your debts. You live and die by the interest rate. So Charlie Munger, arguably the best investor of all time, passed away at the tender age of 99 and 11 months in 2023. God rest his soul. And his whole thing was, and granted, he was worth a couple $1 billion. His entire life, all he tried to do was earn net of tax 6%. Now, he did significantly better than that. But the reason why I'm telling you this is stick to that number. Use what the best investor of all time, or one of the best investors of all time, told everyone else to do. So if you've got your debts, okay, let's say you've got credit card debt, you've got student loans, personal loans, you've got a HELOC, whatever the case may be. Order them from highest interest rate to lowest. And if that debt is above 6%, you're going to want to take any profit that you have every month. Again, what you make minus what you spend, that's profit, that's positive. And you're going to want to hammer that highest interest rate debt. So let's just say you've got a credit card debt of 27%, like I mentioned earlier, okay? That is egregiously awful. However, you got to ask yourself, can I earn better than 27%? Now, I'm just going to tell you the answer is a resounding no. I mean, Warren Buffett, who has been doing this for literally a gajillion years, has earned just under 20%, and he's the GOAT when it comes to investing, okay? So if he can't do it, you're not going to be able to. So take that free profit and hammer out that 27% interest rate on your credit card because that is the rate of return you are earning on paying down that debt. You see where I'm going with this? And then you take anything left over once that credit card debt is paid off. And by anything left over, I mean what you're paying in automatically on top of the profit that you were already making. And then you snowball that in to the next highest debt. And let's say that you have a personal loan at 15%, okay? Still egregiously high. And then you've got another personal loan, and let's say it's 8%. That gets a little gray, 6 to 8, right? Depending on your level of sophistication. But just to keep it simple, all right, if you're more comfortable, you are guaranteeing yourself an 8% return in the loan that you're paying off. So I'm not going to really argue with that. But then let's say that you've got, let's say that you bought a ring for your significant other and you've got a debt on that bad boy that's 3%. you're not going to want to keep snowballing it after that. Now, you still need to pay the debts, because if not, you're going to be a bad human, right? And creditors are going to come after you. That's not great. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take all of that free cash flow that you had from the credit card debt, the student loan, the personal loan, all that fun stuff, above 6%, and then you're going to reinvest that into a long-term investment, whether it's your 401k, whether it's Roth or regular 401k, Roth IRA, investment account, doesn't really matter. It comes down to knowing that the interest rate on debts is extremely valuable. Do not listen to Ramsey. Do not listen to Kiyosaki. Go in the middle of that and understand the true knowledge of the interest rate of debt. Whew. Got me going. I'm hot. So the third to do when you have no money is give up. No, I'm totally kidding. It's know what your 401k match is and put in at least that amount to your retirement plan. So you're probably going, well, Chris, you just went on a friggin' rant on the debt side of things. So why didn't you mention the 401k side in the first place? Well, I'll tell you why, for those that asked organically. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, there is the balancing act of academic knowledge with money and behavioral finance, the emotional intelligence or lack thereof, okay? I don't know you on the other side of the screen, okay? For those of you that are listening in, now I might know some of you, but I don't know all of you. And so some of you may be brand new and you might have a huge uphill battle when it comes to knowing what to do with money. And then some of you might just be really intimidated by it. So just hammering out the debt side of things, that might be the only thing that you can focus on. Academically, does it make sense more to, put money in up to the match of your 401k to get that free money from your employer, and then anything above and beyond that, you go and pay off those high interest rate debts? Yeah, I know that, but some people just can't handle that, okay? So I'm telling that to the listeners that are really new to this and they get intimidated, and I'm also telling this to the experienced listeners that have been tuning in, right? Don't be a jerk. Some people just can't handle where you're at. That is fine. Okay. That's what capitalizing your finances is all about. You need to find where you're at and you need to stay in that lane. Okay. So, but going back to the match, okay, let's say that you're working for an employer. It doesn't really matter what they're giving you. Let's say that they're giving you dollar for dollar up to 4% or 50 cents on the dollar up to 8%. I don't really care. What I do care about is whatever that number is, you got to put in at least that amount. And here's why. I'd like to think I'm a good investor, but I'm not going to earn you a 50% return on your money, 50. And I'm not going to earn you a 100% return on your money, 100. I'm telling you this because when you put money into your retirement plan, whether it's 50 cents on the dollar or dollar for dollar up to whatever, that is a guaranteed return on your money. That is free money that is staring you in the face. It's a gift. And for you not to take that free gift, who doesn't like a free gift? I mean, there's no such thing as free, but you get my point, okay? So know your 401k match, and then anything above and beyond that, for those of you that are a little bit more sophisticated and you understand the number side of things, that's where you want to start snowballing in those high interest rate debts. The last one, drum roll. I'm not going to do a drum roll. It's super annoying. Be ruthlessly diligent on building up your emergency fund. Funny how we mentioned that earlier in the show. So I'm going to go with emergency fund 101, and then we're going to ramp it up a little bit. So if you have no money, hence the title of this episode, you're going to want to have anywhere between 3 to 6 months of emergency funds within your savings account. Now, the reason why there's that range is it really depends on the person. So I'm going to give you just hypothetical examples. Let's say that it's just you and, single, not married, no kids, nothing. And you work a pretty cushy job in the sense that if you slipped a disc or, you broke your ankle, you could still, wheel yourself in and do the job. Okay. Like financial planning. You probably only need about 3 months. of emergency fund because you're probably not going to be out that long. And even if you were, you could still do your job. But let's say that you've got, total opposite end of the spectrum. Let's say you've got a couple kids and you work in construction and it's a one income household. And if you did bodily harm to yourself, you're out for months. That's probably where you're going to want the 6 months side of things. Okay. Now, where you would have your savings account is another question that a lot of people don't like to ask, which I don't know why, but that also gives me job security. So when it comes to where to have your savings, you're going to want to have it in an online savings account. And the reason why is you're earning a higher interest rate on your money than a lot of these traditional banks. And just to give you the reasons why, a lot of these traditional banks, they have a ton of real estate costs and employment costs. And so they can't take any of that excess return and flow it to you, the possible investor. With these online savings accounts, they don't have a lot of that. They don't have nearly the amount of employees. Their overhead is basically nothing. And so they can take a lot of this return that they're earning on the interest rates, given that as of the summer of 2024, interest rates are higher. Okay, this being recorded in June. They can flow that to you. Now, they're also trying to lure you in to get like other services for you to buy, but like, don't do that. Just keep it really simple. Use what they are giving you and call it a day. Now, I would actually argue, even though academically I know that you're not earning what you would be earning on like these highest interest rate debts in your savings account, I'd probably focus on getting that 3 to 6 months of savings up first. And frankly, the reason why is you're preventing, if that emergency does happen, you don't have to go that much farther back where you need to be financially. Now we're going to step it up a notch. So 3 to 6 months in savings, you're good. You've got that interest rate, that high interest rate on your savings, and you don't need anything above and beyond that. But your savings is now earning you interest. So what do you do with that interest? Well, you could contribute to an IRA or a Roth IRA, depending on your tax bracket, circumstance, all that fun stuff, or a non-retirement account, like an investment account. And by doing that, your savings is buying your long-term investments for you. Because there comes a point where you don't need more money in your savings account. Like once you hit that cap, pun not intended, you're good. Okay. So you take that interest and you float it into long-term investments, right? Because at that point, you're not really taking any risk with your short-term money. So you can take significantly more risk, quote unquote, in the long run, which will add, assuming you don't invest like a moron, to a grotesque amount of long-term success, which is great. Now, what's going to also happen down the road, this is a fun little freebie tip before we close this thing out. Let's say that your investments start to compound, right? Again, you've got your savings, all good. You've got your high interest rate, done. You're investing prudently like a madman for the long run. Great. And what happens is, in fact, my brother and I were talking about this earlier, is you start to invest, and then your investments start to make money, and then your investments start to make money. It's the whole idea of compounding. But what happens is then you give it like 5 years down the road, your investments can pay for your mortgage. You give it 10 years down the road, your investments now pay for your day-to-day expenses. So you could do whatever you want. And that's what gets to be really, really exciting. So then the question becomes, how much do you actually need in savings? And this is for more advanced business owners or executives or professionals that, let's say that you've cleaned out a lot of this stuff and you've gone from no money to you're making a lot more money. It's a great teaser for the next episode, maybe, if you're lucky. Do you really need 3 to 6 months? Like, let's face it, if you're spending $5,000 a month, but you're making, like your investments are making $10,000, I could argue you definitely don't need 6 months. Probably could argue you don't really need 3, maybe need 1.5, right? Because you just don't. Let's say you're making $20,000 a month and you're only spending 5. I mean, it's good to have cash on hand, but what happens is as your investments start to pay you more and more and more, in theory, you don't really need as much cash, okay? And then when you get to be worth like just oodles and oodles of dollars, then it becomes a percentage thing. It gets very institutional and all that fun stuff. But that is not what you are here for. What you are here for is everything I went over as far as what you need to do when you have no money. So with that concludes this lovely episode. Sorry for a couple rants, but also I'm not, because it felt really good for me to get it out. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I cannot wait to have you all come back for the next one. If you have questions about today's episode or any personal finance questions, please reach out to me at Cap and Capitalize on Instagram, Chris at capitalizeyourfinances.com, or via our website, capitalizepodcast.com. If you want more Capitalize Your Finances content, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com and check out our blog, free resources, book, and online course. As always, I'm your host, Chris Paniotu, Certified Financial Planning Professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing.
You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. Diversification strategies do not ensure a profit and cannot protect against losses in a declining market. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Roth IRA distributions of principal from a Roth IRA are tax-free. However, any earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59.5 or within 5 years of the date the Roth IRA was established, whichever is longer. Distributions of principal from a Roth 401k are tax-free. However, any earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59.5 or within 5 years of the date the Roth 401k was established, whichever is longer. Your investment options are limited with a Roth 401k to those offered by the plan administrator. Charges and fees may be incurred. 401k benefits may be subject to change at your employer's, the governing pensions, or benefit organization's discretion. Christopher A. Paniotu is a registered representative with and securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.